to Jesus Christ, everybody. Welcome to my channel. It is turning into the 12 days of story time, isn't it? But because today is actually Christmas Day, I'm going to make the video I want to make, and I want to make a story time video. Now, this story is actually, it's a very important event in my life in one aspect, because it happened about 6 months before I was first exposed to Orthodoxy. So it really primed my spiritual pump to receive the reverence of the Orthodox Church. Taken in capsule form, this story is hilarious, but the fact that it took place in church is not funny at all, and I want to make sure that you all understand that I know that. So if I'm laughing, you know I'm not laughing about the fact that it turned a church service into a farce. I'm not laughing at that at all. That's awful, and it's not funny. But if we can kind of set that part aside and just talk about the wild, crazy things, it is funny. Here we go. So the Wayback Machine. You guys know when I was a child, I was a Lutheran. Then I went to college, and I became an Episcopalian because, as a singer, I went to a music conservatory in the East Coast. As a singer, the Episcopalians tend to have a lot of money. I don't know why, but they do. Andrew Carnegie, Episcopalian. So they tend to hire a lot of really top caliber musicians, and also in my case they hired conservatory students because they could pay us a little bit less, but we were still very good at what we did. This particular church was, the town actually predated the American Revolution, but the church was built shortly after that fact. So it's a very, very old church, tiny sanctuary, kind of colonial style. So, you know, you didn't have the single central aisle. You had pews in the middle, then you had two side aisles, you had more pews. Super, super, super tiny, but it was beautiful. It was a beautiful church. And it was a very traditional, what I would call a smells and bells Anglican church. Small O Orthodox Anglican, very close to Western Rite Orthodoxy, or even to the Tridentine, the Latin Rite Catholic. And the music that we did was, without exception, it was from the traditional wealth of sacred choral music. So, you know, we did Palestrina, we did Bach, we did Handel, we did all of these very tasteful musical selections, you know, trying to do our best for the glory of God. And we were fortunate to have a lot of people in that congregation who had a lot of money, and they were very generous with the church in general, but also with the music program. They made some pretty hefty donations. And so they supported us in our traditional music endeavors, as did the vast majority of the congregation. However, there was a small but extremely loud segment that really wanted to incorporate more pop, rock, praise and worship type stuff. There was only a handful of these people, but they made a lot of stink about it. Their leader, we're going to call her Barb. She was a nice lady, but she was very, very vocal about this. And so she was always trying to get the rector, you know, bend his ear, try to get him to force us to do her music. Now, the rector had excellent musical taste. He was all about the traditional music, but the thing is, he did not want to upset her, because unbeknownst to any of us at the time, he was actually embezzling many, 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 many thousands of dollars from this church. He had his hand in the till to the tune of 6 figures. If you're doing that, you don't want anybody to be your enemy. You don't want anybody to start looking at you critically, because then they might find out that they paid for your wife's Cartier watch. So he needed to placate her. Larry. That's what we're going to call him, the rector. Larry. Larry needed to placate her. So he said, Barb, this is a losing battle. You can't change the music program, but you can be in charge of Vacation Bible School. And she said, great. And those of us in the music department said great too, because we didn't really like Vacation Bible School. You know, it was a long day with a lot of kids. You know, we would have hundreds of kids. And it was just this pop music, and we weren't really into that whole sort of thing. So we thought, whoa, this is great. She's going to take a load off of us. And the Vacation Bible School, it was a success. The kids loved it. The parents loved it. Whatever, fine. We thought, great. She's got it out of her system. She can wait to get her next fix until next summer. And oh, what fools we were to think that, because the very next week she was bouncing into the rector's office and she said, Larry! And he took his hand out of the cookie jar long enough to talk to her. VBS was a great success. I think you should let me do more. I'm sure his blood pressure went up 20 points. He compromised with her again. He says, you know what? Okay, fine. You can organize a pageant. You can do like a little mini, like a pageantino, right? One Sunday, pick a Bible story. You teach it to them, you practice, when you're ready, let me know, and instead of the sermon, we'll do your pageant. And I was actually excited about this, because I thought this is going to be a great way for everyone in the congregation to see these two musical styles back to back. You're going to see the legitimate traditional sacred music, and then you're going to see this pop junk. And so I thought this could actually work out, in our favor. So she said great, and we promptly forgot about it for 6 months because we weren't involved in it at all. Then one day, the day of reckoning arrived, and I showed up at church in the morning. There's the bulletin, and it says, Children's Pageant, theme, Noah's Ark. Okay. Now, one thing I forgot to mention. This church was packed every Sunday, right? Because it was so small. And there was a family that used to sit pretty much right in the middle. I believe they were from South Africa. They were in their 80s. I'm going to call them Mr. and Mrs. Brown. They were in their 80s. They were very wealthy. They were very distinguished people who were extremely generous with their money and their time. And they were these warm, giving, loving people who supported the traditional music very strongly. And they sat right smack dab in the middle on this day as well. And Mrs. Brown in particular, really, when you think about her, picture Queen Elizabeth II. Very dignified, always wore a hat to church because, that's what her tradition was. That was proper, and always had a beautiful suit on, and just everything about her screamed class. That'll be very important. The other thing you need to know is that the choir, we were up front off to one side, but because the sanctuary is so tiny, if you were in the choir, everybody else in that building could see you. So if you laughed, or if you made a face, if something didn't go right and you went, everyone was going to see it. So it was an exercise in poker face. We're putting our choir robes on, and Barb comes into the room, and she's got these 2 cardboard banker's boxes, and they have lids on them, and the lids are taped on the boxes. And I said, what's in the box, Barb? She goes, oh, just props for the pageant. I said, okay, fine. She drops them off. She leaves to go warm up the kids. I was a little suspicious. I started checking those boxes over. I was looking for air holes. I was like, does she have something in here that's going to bite or sting me? But she didn't. It almost felt like the boxes were empty, or that they had like cotton balls in them or something. So the service begins. Everything is super tasteful. It's going very well. And then we get to the pageant, and here come the kids. Sunday best, dressed to the nines, moms and dads taking pictures, very cute. And there's about 25 kids. They come filing out. They all stand in the front. And because the church was so tiny, by the way, where they were standing, they were about 4 feet from the first row of pews. They were extremely close. So they start their pageant, and I notice that they're all standing, they're ramrod straight, and they have their hands really firmly clasped behind their back. And at first I thought, well, maybe they just don't know what to do with their hands. Or maybe she told them to do that so the little ones wouldn't, go digging, But then I realized, no. They're hiding something. They're hiding something behind their backs. What are they hiding behind their backs? So they get to the end of the pageant. Here comes the final rousing chorus. You've got the boombox going, and the drums, and the kids are all into it. And as that final piece starts, they produce, from behind their backs, Beanie Babies. Supposed to be the animals going off the ark 2 by 2 after the flood's over. Cute. So I am just about thinking, you know what? This isn't my cup of tea, but at least it wasn't a disaster, right? Wasn't a disaster. We can overcome this. It's okay. It's going to be okay. And then we get to about the last 3 seconds of the whole song. You ever seen a rock star jump into the audience and try to crowd surf? Or try to hype the crowd up by throwing things? On the very last chord of the piece, in one unified, graceful motion, they wing these things into the congregation. 25 Beanie Babies. Whap! Now the idea, I'm sure, was to throw them up where they would kind of disperse and fall down harmlessly to the floor. But the thing is, when you have a 4-year-old child or a 5-year-old child, that child maybe can't get a lot of arm power to throw up. So what happens is they wound up winging these things as hard and fast as possible directly into the people. One of the teens did manage to get their Beanie Baby to go up, but it hit a ceiling fan and then it smashed into a stained glass window. But because it was a Beanie Baby, it didn't hurt the window. It made a loud noise though. But another Beanie Baby, right? Guess who it hit? It hit Mrs. Brown in her glasses. So they were knocked, not completely off, but they were knocked crooked. Her hat flew off. It's like, kind of went like this. Her hat flew off into the lap of the person behind her. And then there was another Beanie Baby that hit her husband. Now, Mr. Brown wore a hairpiece, a toupee. a rug. And that Beanie Baby, it didn't knock it off, but it knocked it back, maybe 2 inches. So he got... he kind of looked like he'd been partially scalped. And I'm sitting there in the front and I can't react. And then we went right into Holy Communion. And that's where it stops being funny. For those of you lifelong Orthodox, it was the anaphora portion of the service. So do you understand? Yes, it was hilarious, but no, it wasn't. Kind of thing. But I am so grateful to God in his ultimate humility, right? That he allowed this to happen, probably for many purposes. But one of those purposes, I truly believe, was so that I would see that and so I would understand even more the gravitas of the situation, the gravitas of when I went to an Orthodox service for the first time. My first service was a hierarchical liturgy. Doesn't get more formal than that. And so I was able to see the reverence that just saturates everything in an Orthodox service and the lack of self-indulgence. You know, I want to do the music that I like. So I glorify God for that because it disgusted me. And it really just helped my decision to move forward into Orthodoxy almost not even be a decision. It was like just inevitable, right? Scalped. He looked like he was scalped. Anyway, guys, I hope you got a chuckle out of this. Thank you very, very much for watching, for commenting and subscribing. If you like the story, the thumbs up button's right down there. If you press it, that would be awesome. And regardless, thank you so much for watching. God bless you all. Christ is born. Glorify him. And I will see you guys real soon with another video. Bye.